Lead the Way, a podcast for school leaders with author, speaker, and educator, Dr. Bill Ziegler.
Today, I'd like to welcome very special guest to Lead the Way, Marcus Belin, the principal of Huntley High School in Huntley, Illinois. Marcus, it's so great to have you on Lead the Way today.
Hey, Bill. Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Marcus, I know you just finished your first year as a high school principal. What are some lessons you learned that our listeners may be able to take away about a first-year school leader?
Well, after finishing my first year, there are so many lessons that I learned. It actually has been an awesome year and probably the biggest growth experience for me in my career. Just some lessons, I would say three things. One is just be you. There is absolutely no mold for a principal. There's no mold that tells you what to do or how to do it. No one is ever going to give you a folder that says, this is how you be a principal. You have the ability to lead the building, to lead staff, to lead students on the path that you desire for them to be on. So that's one. And two, be the leader, be the face, tell the story of the school. Because if no one tells the story of the school, then who will, And so you got to be the biggest cheerleader, the number one super fan for the school, and just you got to put yourself out there. And then number three, learn as much as you can. That was one of the things that I went in doing. I didn't go in having all of the answers, and there were a lot of people who had been there for years. My oldest teacher who's been there has been there for 31 years. So opening myself up to listening to him and having him pour into me some of the knowledge and the history so that I can be able to effectively lead. They always say, you can't know where you're going until you know where you come from. And so that's one of the biggest things, is just being a listening ear for anyone who could share a story.
That is so powerful, what you talk about. Be you, tell your story, be a constant learner. Those are lessons I need as a principal, and I've been a principal for 20 years. So thanks so much for those good reminders. You talk a lot about authenticity and being the real you. What's something you might have struggled with and you overcame as a first-year principal?
One of the things I had to quickly get over was the fact that when I started, I was only 8 years in education. I had only taught 2 years, and I taught 2 years in elementary school. I was a middle school social studies teacher, and I was the leader of a high school with over 300 adults that work in my building. Many of them, like I said, the oldest teacher who's there is 31 years in the game, and I'm only 31 years old. So he's been teaching almost longer than I've been alive. So I had to get over that and understand that, I'm the principal and I'm the leader of the building, and I have to be able to stand on 2 feet and be able to effectively lead, and understand that while I may not have all the answers, I had to humble myself to be able to learn from those that were around me. And it was okay for them to teach me and them to help me lead, and not to think that I can do it on my own.
That's so good. I love how you talk about humbling and just being really humbled to admit that you make a mistake or that we need to grow as a leader. I also really like how you talked about learning. What are some key ways that you learn and grow as a principal? We have just a few minutes left here. Tell our listeners, how are you learning? How are you growing?
I would really say I spend more time out in the classroom and out in the school and in the community, in the hallways and so forth, rather than in my office. More people will say they will find me out in the hallways or not in my office, which is awesome, because that's where I learn the most. It's by seeing and by being around everything that I possibly can to soak it up and understand how things work in their natural way. So stepping really outside of the office was probably the biggest key.
Marcus, thanks so much for those tips for school leaders, not just young ones, but veterans as well. And thanks for all that you do for the students there in Huntley, Illinois. Hey, share with our listeners how they can find you on Twitter.
You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus J. Belin, MarcusJ Belin. And I'm also on Instagram as well. So
awesome. Well, thanks so much for being on Lead the Way today.
Yes, thanks for having me, Bill.
You've been listening to Dr. Bill Ziegler with Lead the Way. Bill has great resources for school leaders at chaselearning.org. That's chaselearning.org. Thanks for listening to Lead the Way with Dr. Bill Ziegler.